Yeah, let me know when you're there, I just to get something on.
Okay.
No. No.
Oh, can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sweet.
So it's working.
So just uncheck.
What'd you
Yeah,
do?
you and then
What'd you do?
also check, yeah, private on here. That's if you don't want anybody to hear you. You just go into that.
As camera and button, right?
Yeah,
I mean, right now, since we're done testing, we'll just hit this.
well, that's, yeah.
You know,
Where did y'all do the speakers?
We are, I mean,
On the actual.
somewhere, probably his. You gotta mute your laptop.
That's what I put.
Yeah, there you go.
Mine.
Okay.
Oh, it's the actual Zoom. Audio.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
It's muted.
Yeah,
Okay. There we go.
all right, I think that works.
Okay, perfect.
Remind everybody we are live right now, so just.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. We're about to get started. We are already live streaming and just waiting for that quorum. Thank you all so much. Can you remind me what the number we need to?
I think it's
9? Okay.
Yeah.
And we are at who is joining us over the phone with a 512 number today?
Oh, hi, this is Kristen Gooch. I'm the one joining via phone today.
Perfect. Thank you, Kristen. About 7.
six. Yeah, I think 6. Yeah, let's see. 7. She said she'll be here. She's not on.
Okay.
But there's the home one. Let's see.
Looks like we're waiting for 2 people to make quorum and just get us started. I think that Tamara was saying that she was going to join us today. So we'll give it just a few more minutes to see if we can meet that quorum.
Sue and Christine won't be.
Yeah. We were also working around graduation and end of semester deadlines as well. So thank y'all for joining us. Laura's having difficulty with the Zoom link. And Nina is joining. She's just having also technical difficulties. Thank you for bearing with us.
Somebody waited.
Right. Wonderful. I think that we have gone ahead and have a quorum now. So we can go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. Good morning. My name is Sabrina Gonzalez Saucedo, and I'm the presiding officer for the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board's IDD Advisory Council. It is 10:06 a.m., and I would like to call the May 29th, 2026 Advisory Council for Post-Secondary Education for Students with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities meeting to order. This meeting is held via Zoom and at the George H.W. Bush Building in Austin, Texas. Before we begin, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome those who have just joined via video conference and ask them to adhere to the following etiquette. Please be aware that although we are meeting via Zoom, this meeting is still being broadcast via the internet. Please mute your microphone when you are not speaking and always keep your camera on. The Higher Education Coordinating Board staff will establish a quorum through a roll call. Each member should identify him or herself prior to speaking for the record. Please wait for one person to finish before speaking, otherwise comments may be muddled or unclear, and motions will be voted on by roll call. With that being said, members, we will begin with a roll call to ensure we have a quorum. And I'll also take the opportunity to introduce us to a new staff member who is working with us moving forward, Dion. Dion, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Dion Johnson. I am new at the Higher Education Coordinating Board. I'm a Program Specialist 5, and I will be joining the IDD AC team. And happy to be here with you all today. So I'll go ahead and start with the roll call. So members, we'll begin with the roll call to ensure that we have a quorum. When I call your name for the record, please state your name and confirm that you are on the call. Aaron Bangor.
Hi, Dion. Aaron Bangor's here.
Thank you. Beth Stalvey.
Hi, good morning. Here.
Brenda Barrio.
Present.
Carrie Thompson. Christina Gashanas.
Good morning. Here.
Christine Price. Dan Zane. Edward O'Neill. Jackie Benestante. Kenneth Evans.
Good morning, present.
Kristen Gooch.
Good morning, present.
Laura Villarreal.
Present.
Lauren Wolfert. Linda Litzinger.
Good morning, present.
Nina Zuna.
Good morning. Present.
Then Sabrina. She is Susan Moraska. And then Tamara Chatron.
Here. Good morning.
All right. So I just want to state for the record that we do have a quorum. And at this time, I would like to acknowledge any guests in attendance. If you are here as a guest, please state your name for the record, what organization you represent, and if you're attending on behalf of someone else.
I don't believe we have any guests on at the moment.
All right. So at this time, I'd like to turn the meeting back over to the presiding officer, Sabrina Gonzalez Saucedo.
Awesome. And we'll move forward to agenda item number 3, consideration and possible action to adopt minutes of the March 13th, 2026 meeting minutes. The draft meeting minutes were distributed in advance for members' review. Are there any corrections or revisions to the minutes as presented? Okay, hearing none, we will move forward with a roll call vote. Linda,
I approve.
I've just been told we don't need to do a roll call vote, so we will go ahead and look for a motion accepting the March 13th minutes. All in favor?
So move.
Okay, Dr. Evans, thank you. Can I have a second?
I second Linda Litzinger.
Linda has a second. The motion passes. Thank you so much. And moving forward, now we can go to agenda item number 4, discussion of recommendations for the report on access to higher education for persons with IDD. Members, this morning, very close to this meeting time, you should have received a document with a couple of pages worth of draft recommendations and language that a couple of council members had been working on between our March meeting and today's meeting. If you were present at the March meeting, you may remember our presentation discussing a little bit about what our priorities are and requirements are as an advisory council to present our final report on access to higher education for students with IDD to the legislature at the end of this year. So after that meeting, a subgroup of council members were able to come together and talk about what possible draft recommendations we would like to present to the legislature in our report moving forward for this year. That final group got together and narrowed it down to 4 specific draft recommendations and worked on recommendation language and background together. So we're going to take the opportunity to walk through the draft recommendations that this subcommittee group worked on and have a discussion and take some feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We can start it. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. So as mentioned, this group came together and really rallied around 4 specific recommendations that we recognized. During our last committee meeting, we talked about the kind of pros and cons of having a recommendation list that was as long as our last one was versus a real prioritization for the legislature of some really concrete policy-focused recommendations. And came across 4 specific topic areas that some of which were already included in our last report and remain issues today, and others that may be newer. So I'll go ahead and start presenting some of these recommendations. The first recommendation that was discussed in the subcommittee was talking about credentials of value and credit transfer. There was a recognition that as newer inclusive post-secondary education programs and comprehensive transition post-secondary programs come to fruition, that there isn't one clear recognized standard for what a credential of value looks like, depending on the program that you are attending. We know that the Department of Education requires that institutions, in order to get a CTP accreditation, offer a quote unquote meaningful credential. But even across CTP programs, this varies widely as to what that means. And I think that some of our institutions of higher education, even on this call, have been able to talk about what that process has looked like for them individually, whether it's pursuing a formal credential with Higher Education Coordinating Board or trying to work within their university system to try to ensure that students that are taking these courses get credit for them. But this was recognized kind of as a larger issue in this space, and trying to encourage that students that graduate from these inclusive post-secondary education programs are set up for long-term success with meaningful academic and work credentials that are supporting their long-term success. And so that's a little bit about what this first recommendation gets at. The actual the way that this is presented in the report is that usually there is the recommendation 1 with recommendation language, followed by a brief background of the issue and giving a little bit of information as to why the issue is currently an issue. And so we had, unfortunately, Christine and Sue, who were not able to join us today, who are working on this recommendation, but we have a little bit of a background on this issue currently that folks can review. I'd be interested in getting some feedback from members as to what they think about this recommendation, this current background. I want to be clear that all of the content that we're going to be reviewing today is very much in draft form and transforming as committee members get to talk about these issues. But wanting your general feedback on recommendation number 1.
Thank you. This is Nina. Thank you, Sabrina, for this overview. I agree. It's an important item to address. I think Tammy was in attendance at the IPSI Red River Alliance. And I recall a lady from Oklahoma, and I wasn't able to attend or hear all of it, was talking about credential of value and getting some legislation passed in Oklahoma regarding that. And I'm wondering if we could use some of that information to this subcommittee to see what they're doing, and that would probably help with the recommendation as well. Do you remember any of that, Tammy? And can chime in?
I'm looking for my notes because I I just have this teeny tiny computer, so it's hard to see more than one thing at once. I did cut the link to that legislation, and it's in a note. As soon as I can get it on my screen, I'll cut and paste it and put it in the chat.
Wonderful. That's great. I appreciate that. And I'm also very much looking forward to when we get to campus and organizational updates, hearing from folks that were able to attend that. I think that's exactly the kind of stuff that we're looking for. So thank you so much. The recommendation language itself isn't written, but again, I'd like to stress that recommendations that we do include in this report for this year have a really policy focused lens for lawmakers, something that specifically lawmakers are able to address or work with. And so I'd love to get that information and see what Oklahoma is doing on this front.
Yeah, so I put that link in the chat for everyone.
So, thank you.
Because I immediately went to our workforce commission and how they make credentials, and then I realized I should be paying attention to the meeting I was at, so I stopped looking. But I think there is a really possible connection there to move things forward.
And so is that, I have a question, is that proposed legislation changing the way that Oklahoma's, I guess, equivalent coordinating board approves and handles credentials for IPSI programs?
Yeah, I think, like, just again, I didn't do a deep dive because I was trying to pay attention, but it, like, they're talking about it as a credential of value. So I don't think they're changing any necessarily approach to how you credential, but recognizing that, like, they probably would evaluate what your program requires and then certify that as a credential of value. I don't know if there's subcategories or how that works.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to looking that up more after this meeting. Thank you. And Linda, I see your hand is raised.
I just wanted to add that I like how broad it is and how flexible it sounds like it is. And I guess just a matter of time to find out what gets approved that we think of. But the flexibility sounds wonderful. That maybe we can transfer credits back from a program they're in to community college, other ideas too. Thank you.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, Texas State is like, no, your students cannot get, I'm sorry, Brenda, your hand was up and I just jumped in, so go ahead.
No, that's okay. You can finish your thought, Tammy.
Okay, thanks. The Texas State has said if the student is not matriculated as a traditional student, they cannot get credit. But I desperately wish that ACC still had a San Marcos campus right now. Would be so helpful to maybe get some dual credit going on.
And so the, I guess, roadblock that you're experiencing at Texas State is not something that exists for ACC.
I think they're more flexible. Like if a student wants to try to take it for credit, they'll be like, yeah, if you did credit level work, you can have credit. Whereas Texas State is like, if you have not been admitted to the university as a traditional student, you can do credit level work, but we are not going to give that credit to you. It could be because we're so new and the language hasn't, I'm choosing my battles, right? So that's not a hill I'm going to die on right now as we get established.
Sabrina, with the UNT Elevar, we are in the process of building a transfer pathway from Dallas College into UNT Elevar. And this will be an MOU between both institutions. We have several across the board within UNT in the traditional degrees, but this one will be very specific to the IPSC. And so it will be a springboard. It will be a 2+2 program or a 1+3, depending on the students and how they would like to do that. But we are in the process of doing that. Their actual IPSC, they're developing a second year that would match all the classes. So it would be a one-to-one transferred into the Elevar program. And we're hoping to expand that to other community colleges across the state.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that update. Christina, I see your hand is up.
Hi, yes. No, I wanted to, thank you for I think it reads very clear and the focus stays on what is next for these individuals, whether that to be employment, to be, continuing their education. So I appreciate that coming out as the recommendation number one. They go to complete an IPSC program, but making sure it's that focus on being connected to employment or continuing their education next. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. I also did want to find a way to include in here, as we finalize these recommendations, talk about industry standard specific recommendation, because I think that is so crucial when a student can walk away with something that employers can immediately reference and know that a student has a base knowledge in X industry. So I have a note that I'd like to include that language in this as we move forward. Brenda, I see your hand up. Is it from before or is it
new?
Sorry.
Let me put it down.
Okay, no worries. Great. All right. With that, I think we can move on to recommendation number 2. And please note that these recommendations are in no particular order at this time. I do think that we should prioritize them as a council moving forward to move them into what we believe is highest priority and moving down from there. But that is still yet to be decided. So recommendation number 2 that was discussed among the subcommittee was a carryover really from last report. In our last report, we talked about the significant discrepancy between the number of CTP programs that exist in other states of similar size and how Texas currently has 4 CTP programs and how Florida had really gone headfirst in investing in inclusive post-secondary education programs and how Texas could do something similar. So in our last report, we made the recommendation that Texas, in a very Florida similar legislation, pass legislation to establish a grant program to encourage institutions of higher education to create or expand CTP programs on their campuses. And this was one of the recommendations that the legislature actually did take from our report last go around, which was very exciting. So during the 89th legislative session, lawmakers passed House Bill 2081, establishing the Building Better Futures program, which is a grant program within Higher Education Coordinating Board to do exactly that, to create and to support institutions of higher education to develop and expand CTP programs. The barrier that I think that we have been recognizing is that despite the fact that the legislature funded the passage and kind of the bones for the Building Better Futures program, there wasn't a specific allocation, fiscal allocation for this purpose. And so I believe that during our last meeting, there was an update in that this has been an item that has really stalled and not been able to get off the ground or have the impact that I think that folks really expected, just because there are no grants to distribute. So this recommendation really is about giving background as to what lawmakers have already passed and asking that the legislature fund the Building Better Futures program to really have the impact that I think that lawmakers and students and families were expecting with this passage. So it's our current language. I apologize, it's kind of split up into 2 different pages. Do we have any questions about this language?
Yes, this is Laura Villarreal with Voc Rehab. So I noticed on the bottom of page 2, you list 4 CTPs. And I don't know if this, has any impact on the verbiage here, but in regards to VR, we had an RFP response, and 2 CASA didn't respond to our RFP, but Texas State Bobcat Rise did. So I don't know if 2 CASA needs to be removed from there, or if that's just separate, language that you all added for different purposes. But I just wanted to make sure that I clarified that.
Yeah. So 2 CASA lost their funding and folded, but then they got, and correct me anybody if I'm not correct on this, they got a TIPSID grant and they're back up and running again, and I cannot remember their new name, but they have a whole different name. Does anyone know it?
I have it handy. I'll look it up. I have it.
Okay, great.
Thank you for that note. Yeah, there isn't a clear, the CTP accredited institutions are found on a couple of different pages on Department of Ed and also financial aid. And I don't think that those are updated regularly. But as of the last, when we were drafting this, when I was looking at who those institutions in Texas that currently have that CTP designation were, it was listing these 4. And so it's clearly outdated if 2 CASA has revamped and is doing a completely different program. So thank you for that note. And as far as Bobcat Rise, I know that Tamara has shared that they have been in the process of getting that accreditation.
Yes, and I feel like we're moving forward. I'm having good discussions with my financial aid department, so.
Wonderful.
I put the name in the chat too for the Transition University is the new name under the funding.
Transition University.
And
I'm sorry, did y'all say that they received, I guess, a TIPSID grant after 2 CASA?
Yes.
Yes, they received the second round of TIP seed funding. They were the only ones in the state of Texas.
Okay, thank you.
And just to perhaps within this, we can add a note. I think there's huge confusion between IPSCs and CTPs. I think oftentimes they are used interchangeably when they're not. An IPSC is an inclusive post-secondary program, like many of us are part of, but a CTP is specific to accreditation from the U.S. Department of Education, and that has very specific requirements, eligibility criteria and so on, but has to be approved. So I just want to make, a note, so there is distinction between the two.
Yeah, I completely agree. These terms are not interchangeable. A CTP can be an IPSI, but not all IPSIs are CTPs.
That's correct.
Similar to the same IDD, anyways, I think that in the beginning of the report, I think it will be important to define some of these important terms and their distinctions. So I definitely want to be sure to do that from the get-go in this report. Thank you for that note. Yes, Beth.
With that comment, going back to the first recommendation, I know that we were focused on credentialing, but is there any value in talking about the work experience or some of the other things that are available in an IPSI that could go on a transcript, internships, or things like that, that might not be the credentials, but could certainly be elevated to go on the transcript?
Yeah, internships and work experience are often a really critical part of these IPSI programs. And so that's a great note. Thank you.
And then just as Brenda just said, just making that distinction in some of the background for number one.
Yeah. The other note that I did want to make was that the recommendation here is, and I think in our other one is pretty broad in that we are asking the legislature to appropriate funding. And so what I did want to bring is that I think that maybe there is, or kind of talk through what value there is in assigning a specific dollar amount that would be appropriate to get the ball rolling on establishing a program. If we're looking at a set number of specific grants to start off with and then build from there, or what that would look like, but that it might be good to kind of sit with the committee to think through what a specific dollar amount number here would be to ask legislators, because we could ask them to appropriate $1 or $1 million or 100 million, whatever that looks like. But I think that as being as tangible as possible may work in our favor. And so just want to leave us with that.
I think that's a great idea. And those are conversations that I think we've had in the past, but explicitly including them in the report would be very important.
Great. Yes, Beth.
This is more of a question for Higher Education Coordinating Board and just a process as to whether this council asks for funding independently or whether we are asking the Higher Education Board to include this in their legislative appropriation request. I don't know the specific process, but I feel like to ask for that funding, I'm not sure that this council would have the authority to do that by itself. I might be wrong.
Hey Beth, this is Waylon. So no, we don't have authority to like specifically request the funds, but we can make the recommendation. Funding should be funding would be beneficial to support this recommendation or carry out this project, plan, initiative in that regard. And it would take it, and I think the agency on that part would then consider if it's something, let's say like general appropriations that we internally as an agency can appropriate to support this initiative, and or if it's something that they deem as what we would call an exceptional items request for them to take to the legislators to request, hey, this is a project, this is a program that we see for a major benefit for this population. We would like to request X amount of dollars to support this as state appropriated specifically for this focus. And that's up to leadership to make that determination.
I just think that's an important question to ask the board. I know this report and recommendations will go through the board first before it goes to the legislature, correct? So I do think that, to your point, I would have the same comment about the Technical Assistance Center. Is it separate funding? Is it the Higher Education Coordinating Board allocating some existing resources, putting that into some other technical assistance they're doing? I think that's beyond the scope of this committee. I think it would require some fiscal notes or impact statements or things like that. And so I think we just need to designate maybe in this report who we're asking to do that and where it goes. And I don't want us to be asking for a specific dollar amount outside of that process if that's not really our process to follow.
That makes sense. Good notes, good points. And I can do some work on that back end on that for some direction or guidance.
That's helpful. Thank you, Beth, for bringing that up. And I guess for our knowledge, what are the deadlines that internally the agency works off of to create their legislative appropriations requests and exceptional items for submission to the legislature?
That I'm unaware of as far as that timeline, but I can double check on that. Yeah.
I mean, typically it is that they're pulling it together in the fall. So I do think that now is a good time to be circulating those asks within the agency. But again, that's up to the agency.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nina, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, no, thanks, Beth, for bringing that up. That's beyond my scope of understanding. So I'm glad that was part of the conversation to understand the process. My suggestion is minor, and it's, trying to figure out what other states have done when they have started this process. Like, how much money did they appropriate for that? So it might be good just to do a little research just to kind of see, what they started out with and, how much it kind of built to, just in case, we get asked, what is an appropriate amount, that we would have some research and backing on that.
Totally agree. I think that there was some initial research that was done into what Florida had started with, and I think that we were very impressed with the amount that they had been allocated by their state legislature, and so we can go back and look at exactly what that number was and persuade legislators to do the same or even more. So. From here, we can move on to recommendation number 3. And I do know that we had some folks that worked on this language and background. So I wanted to invite either Beth, Linda, or Aaron to talk a little bit about this recommendation and background section.
Beth, are you?
I guess no one wants to speak, so I'm fine to
Not all at once.
to take this.
Thank you.
As the recommendation is written here, it is pretty broad, but I do think one of the questions for this group is whether we should get into some more specifics. But this is basically appropriating funding or existing resources, whatever the Higher Education Coordinating Board would advise, to offer a structured technical support system that helps colleges and universities to create, implement, and sustain these post-secondary programs for students with IDD. And so that would include all of the IPSIs, all the CTPs, the credentialing, the things that are in the Building Better Futures. So we already have data on kind of what it takes to develop, design, obtain funding, understand the funding process, develop the curricula, tracking all the outcomes, sustaining the program efficiently within each institution, and then being compliant with some of the federal requirements. And so this technical assistance hub would really help organizations and universities set one up, or if they do set one up, kind of how to sustain that And I think that we just heard about, some of the examples from Texas State, who's trying to do this right now. And so this technical assistance center would really help try to expand those programs. Again, I don't think this is just some draft language. And if we needed to be more specific about those elements in terms of tracking and federal compliance and things like that, we could certainly add that.
Thank you, Beth. And I think that this recommendation, really, we were able to see the need for it even on our subcommittee call. I think that there are informal, and I don't want to speak for our institutions of higher education, so please feel free to chime in. But I think that what we had heard was that there were a lot of informal opportunities for collaboration and getting some tidbits and recommendations from multiple different sources, whether that was Think College or anecdotally through own partnerships, but that one technical assistance hub that was really designated as the place to get technical assistance for institutions of higher education that have or are considering creating CTP programs or IPSI programs on their campuses would be incredibly helpful to have one standardized location within the state, and that the Higher Education Coordinating Board could really serve as that place to offer that structural technical assistance and support for institutions of higher education. But yes, Brenda.
Yeah, this is a great idea. This is something that we actually pitched for the TIPSY grant on our last round to receive federal funding, and not only that, but also expansion to K-12. I'm wondering how this would be different though from Think College, because Think College already does a lot of these things. I understand the context within the state, but I'm wondering if we should hone it in and make it a little bit more specific to differentiate between the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's totally fair. I think that the goal was that this technical assistance center would serve as a place to get Texas specific recommendations. I think that in our subcommittee, there was even a recognition that this was our experience with pursuing a specific credential through Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board for our specific program. And so I think that Think College will remain a really important resource for institutions of higher education and families in getting the core information about what an IPSI is and all of these other pieces. And this would just be I guess, adding to that. But I think that we should very clearly define that distinction in this report and in this recommendation. I think that's important. Yes, Tammy.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think what we were talking about is that we needed someone to translate all that information into the local context. For instance, Brenda super helped me get the program started at Texas State. But yet 3 years later, my financial aid department is still going, you want us to what? I think finally now they're like, oh, it's a thing. And now that we've been there for 3 years, and it'd be great to have somebody that tells financial aid offices that this is a thing so that when someone comes to them, they've already heard of it.
Yes, Beth.
Just to that point, I do think that having a state organization would really give that credibility to our state colleges and universities. I don't know that we have to specify in this report what the technical assistance would include, other than to generally say that we will draw on national resources that provide this type of information, and that we will borrow from best practices from other states. But I don't feel like this report is exactly where we need to list what states we're looking at or resources like a Think College. I think that we can just say that, this is technical assistance that will be drawn from existing resources and providing locally specific where needed, and kind of leave it at that, because I don't want to, as much as I appreciate Think College resources, I think to someone not familiar with this field, then it looks like, well, I don't need to do anything if that already exists? Why am I adding to it? And we all know from, I think, our work on this committee so far that Think College is not as comprehensive as we would like. Not all of our programs are on Think College. And so while it's a great resource, I don't think it is as comprehensive as we all envision.
Thank you, Beth.
Okay.
Dr. Evans.
Yes, and just to dovetail off of what Beth was saying, we want to keep the language broad as possible because then we want to future-proof it too. We don't want to pigeonhole ourselves to just looking at one or two different entities. And as things change, we want to be able to change with it. And also, too, Think College is going through its own transition as well, too. So there are not going to be they're not going to have the resources that they had before. So by expanding our own in-state resources, we'll hopefully make up for the gap that's going to be left by the reduction in resources that Think College has. And also, too, we can focus on, as we said, state-specific things, legislature, state and environmental and employment patterns that may be different from state to state, and focusing on programs that are apropos to what's happening here in Texas.
Thank you. Linda.
Thank you. I just want to say I agree with the last two comments. I think college tends to have gaps here and there that we don't want to fall into just by glomming onto that to them. So thank you.
Amy.
So in Oklahoma, and all of you who have more experience than me chime in. Julie Lackey is the person who she started this thing called the Oklahoma IPSI Association, and I'm putting it in the chat. So it's interesting because we kind of telescope back and forth between national with Think College, and now there's another professional organization that was just created, and then down to the state level, and then we have interstate alliances. Well, Julie is kind of the in-state person for Oklahoma, and again, she does so much that I almost don't understand exactly what she does, other than all the things. So that might be someone we want to talk with more. Like, she helps me all the time in my role, but I've never really grilled her on exactly what she does. I just know she does a lot because I hear her talking about it. So I don't know if that is kind of what we want to pattern off of. Kenny's giving a thumbs up, but there's just so many moving parts. It's hard to understand it all for me anyways.
Yeah. And that's wonderful. I think that that's definitely someone that, or something that we would want to look at. I know that one of the things that we had been looking at was that Florida, in their model for doing their Building Better Futures-esque thing, they have this one huge center. Well, it seems on the outside, a huge center, with part of it being that grant making piece for institutions of higher education. And then it has the technical assistance hub, where they have specifically for, I think that really they support grantees and people that want to apply for these institutions of higher education that want to apply for these grants to create CTPs and IPSIs on their campus. And the other reason that I think that they're so needed specifically in their state is because Florida went out of their way to create a state level CTP designation. And so that is a whole separate kind of system that I think that their technical assistance hub does a lot of support for as well. But yeah, I think that there is a lot of, there's a lot to be gained by having a technical assistance hub that is housed within Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to lend validity and credibility to the information that's being distributed to institutions of higher education. I think that it is very important to lean on these associations and kind of partners in the establishing of these programs, but getting it from one specific credible source is I think something that could be different within a technical assistance hub like this that could be very valuable. Yes, Brenda.
Yeah, no, and thank you for the clarification. That is really, really helpful. I was thinking about it from that perspective, Sabrina, from the model that Florida has, because I do think that that's key. Perhaps I got thrown off with a technical assistant, the title, but yes, I agree. I was just trying to figure out if this was going to be very specific to the Texas context, which my guess is it is, which is fantastic. But yes, helping craft a lot of the grants and how they're distributed, but also be a liaison between the universities and Texas Higher Education Board. That would be fantastic. So thank you all.
Of course. And then the last recommendation that we had was related to something that I think that we talked about in our last autism report, but is something that I think that our committee has been grappling with, which is trying to improve accurate data collection on students with IDD in Texas post-secondary education. And Nina, I know that you did draft this specific background language and recommendations. So I wanted to see if I could turn it over to you to speak a little bit to this language.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. You're correct. The past report, we were charged with collecting both the graduation data, the seniors exiting out of K through 12, and then also the college and university data of students with IDD that were in post-secondary programs. As a result of that report, we realized the big inconsistencies and discrepancies when we got the data. With some universities, their students with IDD were not even counted. I mean, big programs were just left out. So I dug deeper and met with the statisticians at the Higher Education Coordinating Board. I think Waylon was part of that meeting to learn how this data was being collected. And then that's when I was shared the reporting manual that colleges and universities use. After that, I set up a meeting with folks from the Higher Education Coordinating Board and university reporting officials, which I had one from UT Austin attend, and I believe there was one in Arlington. I forgot. I don't know who remembers that college that also attended. And once we dug into the conversation, and looking at the manual and looking specifically at the IDD section, it has a nice, definition, what IDD is. There probably could be a little cleanup with that definition. And then it clearly states that students with IDD, regardless if they're in a credentialed program, certificate program, and entering the program at any time, that they should be counted. However, there's one sentence in that manual that the reporting officials alerted our attention to, that if these students are not reported on the 12th day of the class for the fall and the spring semester, then they will not be included in that census data. So, of course, our program, our students are not part of a academic matriculating program, so they're not counted. So when I was looking through the manual, it's pretty confusing because it indicates in the section on IDD that these students should be counted, and then that there's that one sentence in there. So that's what needs to get rectified. So that's one part of it. The second part is, even if these students were included, we know that there's a lot of inconsistencies on campuses, collaborating, cooperating with other student disability services, other offices that are collecting this data. So I have two recommendations there. Is one is fixing those reporting requirements, that either that these students are counted regardless if they're part of that enrollment requirement on the 12th day, or creating some separate pathway that identifies these students independent of, not, without regard to this 12th day requirement. And then the third recommendation is setting up a centralized campus contact. So one person is in charge of coordinating with all the different disability service offices, all the different post-secondary programs for IDD or autism that are on campus to ensure our students are accurately accounted for. So there's two main recommendations: fixing the reporting manual and then ensuring there's a centralized contact to collect this data. And at the very end, I also reference the Building Better Futures program, that since it was passed, we still need to get appropriation for it. But if we don't have accurate data that is being collected, then it's not going to be able to benefit the Building Better Futures program, right? Because we need to kind of have a good sense of who is at these programs. So those are the background of how this came about, the recommendations. Again, this is also a draft, and I'm happy to get feedback. I know it's long, so if we can shorten it too, then I'm happy to work on that too as well.
Thank you, Nina. And thank you for your note in the chat, Aaron. Yes, I think that we can shift that to mimic the frequency for how we did the other recommendations and put those recommendations up top, followed by the background. That makes sense. Yes, Beth.
I might also suggest that some of this get included in the recommendation for the Technical Assistance Hub. So maybe that recommendation can become number 4, and it may be worth including. I don't know the extent to which Higher Education Coordinating Board currently provides technical assistance on these required data points that need to be reported, but to try to absorb that into the Technical Assistance Hub so that people can ask for clarification on these definitions, or when new staff come in, they can receive kind of an orientation on how to do this. So I would just maybe add that. We do have some of the data and tracking referenced in the Technical Assistance Hub, but maybe that needs to have a couple more sentences. Again, trying not to turn this into, a really long document, but I do think that Technical Assistance Hub does have a primary position in being able to provide sample surveys and tracking outcomes, and what are the student outcomes that need to be measured, so that there is some consistency around the state.
It's a great idea. I think that ideally the folks in this Technical Assistance Hub would be able to be the go-to folks to answer questions for reporting officials on institutions of higher education campuses, to try to discern what these questions are asking for, which students are included. And I think that's a great natural integration of those two recommendations. So thank you. Any other notes, either specifically to this recommendation? Yes, Tammy.
So I'm wondering if, like, how there's a CIP code for CTP programs, if perhaps it would be beneficial if there was some kind of statewide code, so that, like, our students, they do show up on reporting because they're enrolled in classes, but could there be a code that is utilized that helps the students show up in reports?
I like that idea, because right now it's a generalized that CBM OC1 is like all students, and then it has a note for a definition for students with IDD. So maybe if there is a separate code for that,
because sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, that's it.
Yeah, because we're starting to learn all the ways we can make our students look more present on our university. So, like, doing independent studies, like setting up internships as independent studies, or there's actually a new designation for work on our university, so that those credits go right through the transcript.
Yeah, that could work with item number 2 there, create a separate reporting pathway. So maybe it's, asking for that code there for all the different types of programs, IPSY programs.
Yeah. I like that 2 is broad enough that it would include some very creative solutions to this, like having a statewide code specifically for exactly what Tammy is describing. Thank you. Do we have any other note? Yes, Beth.
One more comment. I do appreciate the coding, but I still don't think that having any of these codes take care of the source of the data in terms of having self-report, where folks go, like, whatever we code it, it's not great data to begin with. And so I guess I hesitate to add codes when you're just going to be reporting new codes, and I don't think that it accurately reflects. So I agree that we're trying to make folks look more present, but I don't know, are we at the point, it's more of a question, are we at the point that additional code would help, or do you really need more investment right now in universities and students and other staff understanding how to report students to the Higher Education Coordinating Board? I guess I just don't have a lot of faith that is high quality at this point. And so adding a code means that then now we look at the code, and then I think we're going to be in the same position that we've been in, where you look at these numbers and we know that they are not accurately reflecting the students that are on our campuses. And is there another intervention that we need to do first?
Right. No, I agree. I think that was mentioned in the background, that a lot of students that have to either self-disclose or they're not wanting to disclose. So that's kind of what recommendation 3 is. But I think we need to add some more to that. The centralized, reporting person still might not capture all of that information. I mean, we can't require students to self-disclose, right? There'll always probably be some students that might not want to identify as a student with, IDD or autism on the campus. So what would you recommend in terms of recommendation number 3 to help get at that?
I don't have any specific answers, and I don't want to add to the list of things that you're supposed to do in K through 12 or at your IEP plan, where you're talking about Medicaid services and we're talking about all of these other things. I don't know that that's the place to then say, hey, when you're going to college, you should probably seek out this office. You should think about disclosing. This is what the pros and cons are. These are some resources that you would get. This is what would be helpful. I don't know if students get that, or if they get it at enrollment. I'm not sure. I know I'm in the midst of college orientation right now for the first time, and I haven't been in any orientation where they say, hey, and another thing, if you have a disability of any kind, you should probably connect with our Office of Disability and go talk and see what services are available. I haven't seen any of that in the materials. I don't know if there needs to be.
Well, that reminds me of a conversation that I had with Ed O'Neill from TEA, because they're required to track all of the students in the K through 12 setting, right, that have an IEP. So maybe there has to be some type of coordination between students that are exiting the program, and would we be able to follow them if they enrolled in a post-secondary program? I don't know. That sounds like a big data ask, but that's the only way to kind of know.
I think that The answer when we were doing this with the autism report was no. And it was that even the K through 12 data had tons of limitations. And then even though that had more of a requirement and was more accurate, it still wasn't accurate. And then when you got to college, it was even less accurate because now you have no other formal process to talk with someone about your needs that you had in high school. And so again, I know I've heard recommendations here about the transition and how you lose all your resources that you got in 12th grade, and then you don't get those same adaptive devices or any kind of support. So again, I don't necessarily know what the ask is other than to say, I don't know. Should we talk about this before we add more reporting codes that we can then say aren't great?
I'm just wondering, and this may be way out there, is it possible on college applications to add the question, did you have accommodations in K through 12 or did you have an IEP? That could be totally illegal and not a good idea.
Do IPSI, I should know this, but do IPSI students fill out the general college application, or do they fill out a separate program application?
For our institution, they do both. They get into our program first, and we've examined all their materials from K through 12, and then they have to apply to the university. They don't have to go through all the application parts, but they do have to apply directly to the university as well.
Yes, Linda.
Along this same thought, anecdotally, our families are saying we're choosing smaller colleges because they seem to be more flexible in working with the student and their particular needs. And so it would be good to have the data from two angles, from high school doing a follow-up and finding out where they moved on to, and that would collect the private universities. And then also having what we're talking about, looking at it from the college point of view, how many people identified themselves. I'd love to see the whole picture from both high school and college. Thank you.
Dr. Evans.
Thank you. Being a director of admissions by default, I was thinking the way to do this, and I think Tammy had alluded upon this, is having like the two-tiered application process, having an application to the institution, because then that would take care of them being aligned with your school and also give some flexibility to the programs that they could pursue, and then have a secondary selective admissions program into whatever IPSI program is established there. And that gives students flexibility to, if they don't get accepted into the IPSI program, then at least we have some alternatives for them to be connected with the institution.
Thank you.
So just another thought. I don't know why I have so many comments today, but to that point, I think it goes back to recommendation number 1. As long as we have IPSI and CTP programs that are set aside and attached outside of these university and college systems, you will always have 2 separate application processes. And so the folks that are finding these programs are finding the programs because in an IPSI program, they just want their child to come in and have a college experience, and there's nothing wrong with that, but the college and university does not recognize that as they recognize it, but I think we've had lots of conversations here about what that support looks like and what that pipeline looks like and how colleges and universities can be more, what is the right word, that these programs can be more integrated and not just a separate program that's kind of over in this building and we're happy to give you space on campus. It really kind of using that. And then while I'm still talking, I might put Christina on the spot, going back to the higher education. Isn't there requirements within K-12 and LEAs that they have to consult and advise on higher education? And don't they track who has been advised or when higher education has been discussed? And if that's not, if I'm remembering it wrong, that's fine too.
I'll chime in. And it is on their like summary of performance, when students graduate the transition, like that, yes, like options have been discussed, like when the Garrett Center works with students to help identify what their post-secondary education option is going to be, then that provides them to be able to say we've connected with other agencies also that's helped to support and explore what their options are after high school. Does that help, Beth?
I think I'm just thinking of a data point just to kind of narrow down the field that, if that was a readily available public data point, then maybe focusing on the individuals who had expressed an interest in higher ed or had been counseled on higher ed or advised, then following those students into a higher education setting and tracking how they're interacting with the university and self-reporting and providing targeted education about the benefits of self-reporting and those types of things. That might just narrow it down so you're not having to do the whole population.
Yes, I mean, I know educators are just submitting the Indicator 13 reports, and so it might be like one of those data points on Indicator 13 where they're supposed to, yeah.
Yes, Nina.
No, I appreciate all of the conversation, and I would love for things to be a little more integrated with the application process. The only worry about that is universities would not even consider an initial application for our students. We have our own application process, so that would only be for a recognized CTP program when they have to go through the regular admissions process. Otherwise, that would have to be a requirement put on, in the recommendations for universities to have initial applications. And that secondary one, I think that Dr. Evans had recommended, if we wanted to go that route, I think it would have to be a recommendation, because universities aren't going to just say, yeah, let's have an initial application for all of these programs. Is that how I was understanding the conversation?
But I think there's a little bit of precedent for that. I guess I'm thinking like you apply to a university and then there's like a separate application process, say if you want to go into an honors college or something. So, why would it not be like, and then you do all of your curricula under the honors college umbrella. So why couldn't it follow kind of a similar path where you're applying and then you indicate somewhere on the application that I'm really interested in these, current IPSI and CTP programs, and then they would have to go, and then they could go and fill out another application for that. But anyway, I know there's pros and cons to that, and you don't want people to necessarily get screened. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love the idea. I just think we'd have to make it as a recommendation, because universities aren't doing that now, except the ones, the CTPs that have to. And they, even when I was having the meeting with the reporting office, they think, well, we would need more staff, to be able to do things right. Even when I tried to have the initial conversation about applying for a CTP, with the financial aid office, they're like, well, who's going to be doing the applications? And we said, well, it's not going to be that many applications. So I think we would have to, make some type of recommendation that would alleviate those types of concerns. But I like the idea, but how would we kind of draft those recommendations to make it come to fruition?
Tammy, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, I just was gonna say, our students apply through us first, and when they apply to the university, it's just a formality so they can get in the system. I think just the number of people that we get asking questions about our program, I would not recommend that you put it as just a box to click on a regular college application because it would be a mess. Like, because people don't, I'm sure anyone that would see something on a college application would assume that it's a degree granting program. And you would just, it would just, I think, not be good.
But it will be after recommendation number 1.
Yes, it will. Well, thank you all so much for that discussion on all of these recommendations. I think that it's put us in a really good place to continue drafting this report. This work that's been done so far is just the beginning. It's just on the recommendations portion. But as folks that have been on this committee for a little bit now understand, this report also includes pieces before and after, including an executive summary, kind of introductory pieces and background of leading into these recommendations, and then a conclusion at the end. And so that work will still continue, and I'm hoping to set up another smaller group of folks to talk through the finalization of these specific recommendations, and hopefully get to vote on some final language for these recommendations at our next council meeting. Wonderful. Okay. So please stay on the lookout for further announcements about reconvening for further work on this specific access report. With that, we can move on to the next agenda item, and that is discussion and update on Texas Workforce Commission's vocational rehabilitation policy update on comprehensive transition post-secondary programs. I do think that Laura put into the chat that she was going to step away because she was being on a phone call. Laura, are you with us right now? She is not. So it might be helpful if we skip on to agenda item number 6 and then come back to that agenda item. Does that sound good to folks? Great. So agenda item number 6 is an update on the IDD recruitment and post-secondary program survey. As folks that were on for our last meeting may remember, we had a discussion after talking about the data issue in question about opportunities that may exist in getting more accurate information, not through the CDM, but through the survey, the IDD program inventory recruitment survey that is distributed to institutions of higher education in the spring. There were a couple of recommendations that were made at the time to provide additional context in that survey through comment boxes, including definitions to clarify that the survey is focused on students with IDD, and clarifying that institutions of higher education with multiple programs on their campuses should submit 1 entry per program. So thank you so much for that feedback. I know that we shared that with Waylon and wanted to get an update on those recommendations and if they were taken for this next survey.
Yes, thanks, Sabrina. So at this time, we are wrapping up the final updates on the survey and to release hopefully within the next week. And once that goes live, we anticipate at least 3 to 4 weeks for that to remain open. So hopefully we can get it out within the next week and maybe wrap up survey responses by the end of June. That way we have the month of July to write our report and submit for board material at that time. But as far as some of the items that you mentioned, we were able to address pretty much all of those updates as far as adding like some additional comment boxes for some of the questions that you may want to elaborate on due to unique situations. We added some descriptive text at the beginning of the survey to link our definitions back to our rules to identify like, hey, this is what we're considering for our definitions for IDD in addition to like program inventory and those sort of things. As well in that introduction of the survey, we also put the language that includes if you have multiple programs, please provide an additional response or submit one for each program that you may have at your institution. I believe there was one other edit that Aaron had suggested as far as the check boxes for the credentials, instead of it being like a yes or no for all of those, but specifically identify if you had a degree, a license, or a certificate, or none. And so I made those check boxes. So yeah, so I think we're in a good position at this time for this survey, and we'll see what type of responses are yielded when we put this out. So, and it will go out to all our folks that have submitted last year as the program contact, and we will also send a Gov delivery to all of our chief academic officers throughout the campuses, including this probably would go out to our presidents and chancellors as well, because it is a statutory requirement. So, and that's what we're waiting or will be waiting on to get final approval from the commissioner.
Wonderful. Thank you for that update. I'm glad to hear that some of the recommendations that we talked about as council members were included. And so it seems like it'll be distributed, did you say, within the next week?
We hopefully in the next week. Now, that's pending leadership's approval, but it'll be ready to go shortly.
Gotcha. Wonderful. Well, I'm excited to see that Gov delivery. We can definitely encourage folks to hint, nudge, nudge, forward it to folks that you know are already working in this space, so that we can get hopefully a good picture on this side outside of the CDM. So thank you. Nina, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Waylon, for that update. And I'm wondering, did we add on the bottom of the survey to coordinate with the different offices? Because if it goes out to the people who completed it last year, like myself, and then it goes out to the university reporting official, I'm just wanting to make sure there's not going to be any double counting, or how is that going to be coordinated?
Yeah, so I think even with the Gov delivery, we I believe we had language to coordinate with your reporting official, because that's who typically submits the data on these. But is there any other suggestive language, or you got to think broad enough for it to be relatable or universal for all institutions, despite everyone on campus may have a different representative to submit the responses to the survey. So we can't designate one specific person, but we can, provide language to please coordinate with your staff, or the reporting official is typically the one that handles most of these, but at the same time, we can include maybe language for any staff overseeing IDD programs or anything to that extent, or Office of Disabilities, like please coordinate amongst, these team members or something to that extent, and if you think that'll be helpful.
Okay, yeah, I just forgot what the language was on there, but I think if, all the programs are going to be naming their programs and there'll be one for each program, that should suffice. I know we have a couple of different, we have our one post-secondary program, but then we also have, Longhorn Ties, the disability, the Office of Disability Support, and sometimes they had reported numbers from Office of Disability Support that was from Longhorn Ties, and then Longhorn Ties also did their own survey. So I guess ensuring that when one person does report that they're noting the different programs they're reporting on, so it isn't double counting.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely like try to add additional language to coordinate that. Let me ask this, for example, on your campus, do you rely on like the data team or research team to provide those numbers, or you already have those in-house and able to just pretty much complete the survey on your behalf, or do you need other staff or departments to support in other ways?
So we report on our own post-secondary program and our numbers, but I recall when I had a conversation with our reporting official that sometimes they would reach out to Longhorn Ties and the Office of Disability Support to get those numbers. But I'm not sure like if a separate survey is also going to be also going out to Longhorn Ties or other disability offices. So as long as there's a place, I think, on the survey, if like there is one office that is trying to collect data for multiple programs, that they need to know themselves to separate out the programs, right? Because there's students that are on our campus that that might not be part of Longhorn Ties and are only numbers through the Office of Disability Supports. So there's like 3 areas or 3 offices, I think, that would have data at our university.
That's helpful. Thank you. And yeah, I'll try to just maybe add some additional language to, to ensure like, please work with your staff across campus to collaborate your responses, and we'll see how it goes.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Let's see if we might be able to return back to agenda item number 5. Laura, are you with us now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, wonderful. So we'll go ahead and come back to agenda item number 5, which is the update on Texas Workforce Commission's vocational rehabilitation policy update on comprehensive transition post-secondary programs. Members, as you might remember, this council previously received an update when the agency announced a pause on referrals of vocational rehabilitation clients to CTP programs. At that time, TWC shared that it would be conducting a more in-depth review of existing CTP programs and evaluating related policy and contract considerations. And so today we've asked our TWC representative, Laura, to provide an update on that. And so Laura, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. And just for full disclosure, I was not involved in the CTP process, and I don't oversee it. One of my peers does, and he was kind enough to give me an update, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. So our agency did create a procurement process that allowed for CTPs to apply following a contract outline. And we did get responses from 4 of them: Texas A&M Aggie Achieve, Texas State Bobcat Rise, University of North Texas Alavar, and Houston City College Vast Academy. So we're in the process of finalizing those contracts. As you all know, it requires, unfortunately, a lot of back and forth between the agencies, especially when you're communicating with the university, and then you have our state agency and you have legal involved in that. And so we're hopeful that before the start of the upcoming school year, that those will all be in place and contracts will be finalized that will allow for a flat fee payment process for those 4 programs. And then in the future, if there's any other CTPs that are interested, they'll have to wait for another procurement process to open. So that is really all I have available to share on that topic.
Thank you, Laura. We have a question
course.
from Mia.
Yeah, thank you, Laura, for that update. I'm just curious, how does TWC determine the flat fee with the university? I mean, with the program?
I wasn't involved in those negotiations. All I can say is the ones that I have been involved in the past, outside of the CTPs, like the specialized post-secondary programs, the entity submits their proposal and we review it. And then there's deliverables that are tied to what the cost is. And so I would assume that they would have followed that same process when determining what the fee was.
I can explain it a little bit more from our side of what we did. We just broke down all the instruction, all the hours of employment classes, internship opportunities, independent living, that, just broke everything down into the hours that we provided those services. So obviously we're residential, so you can't really include the fact that 24/7 they live there, right? So, and I'm guessing, I'm not on the other end, that they translated the things that were specifically tied to employment to services that TWC provides, and kind of did like comparable, apples to apples as much as they could.
Thank you, Tammy. And I know that part of the experience from students and families that we had heard before was that, and I think what was the impetus for starting this process was just recognizing that there was some irregularity between what one student who is attending a CTP program may have gotten for VR support versus another. And so I do know that there were some students that were getting their full tuition, room and board paid by VR for them to be able to support these programs. How might a student that is may have had that offer before? I guess I'm trying to understand the difference between the impact of a student that went that route versus the now flat fee. How is that difference in flat fee that is offered now versus what a student may have been getting before?
I don't know if Laura has an answer, but we are really concerned about that because we do have because again, it depended on your specific counselor and how they interpreted what they could do. But we do have a student that was getting a lot of things paid for. I've never seen their actual paperwork, so I don't know what. And I worry that it will be a reduction. It will be a reduction in what they're receiving. So I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, I mean, what I would recommend, Tammy, is that you seek out, have that student contact their VR counselor and find out what was on their IPE. In an effort to not disrupt those that were previously sponsored before the pause, we continued services as we had committed to. Going forward, once these contracts are finalized, we'll be, committed to following what the contract outlines for future customers that we sponsor. But we did present to the RCT, and we were very clear that our intent was not to disrupt previous. And if we committed to services as outlined on the IPE for that customer prior to the pause, then we stayed on that route. But once the contract is in place, just like any other legal document, we're tied to provide services in alignment with that contract.
And can I ask you a question, Laura? So I'm assuming that the discussions of creating and making an institution a vendor, those discussions are happening at a level that I'm not involved with. Is right
as far as finalizing the contract, that would probably be your legal department and ours, as well as the contracts department.
Okay, because nobody's asked me to do anything. So I'm I just wanted to make sure I wasn't being negligent. Thank you.
So I did want to come back around because I do remember in the beginning that when the pause was announced that there was in that policy a commitment for students that already had a CTP program on their IPE that they would continue to receive that support for that service. So can I confirm that that will be that same, I guess, level will be supported until the end of the program, or that students, as Tammy has mentioned, that are currently being supported by VR are currently have it on their IPE, that after this contract negotiation would be finalized, that they could experience a reduction for the rest of their time in their program?
I would hate to give a blanket answer on that. What I would suggest is that the customer go to their counselor and review their IPE to make sure that those start and end dates on the IPE and what they've committed to reflect when that sponsorship, what the plan is for that sponsorship. But for those that where the IPE does state that we're going to continue paying for that, and if they've already started in it, then we would continue. The commitment is outlined on the plan.
Gotcha. But that language in the IPE would specifically have to state for the duration of how long the student is in the program, correct?
Right. The customer should talk to their counselor about that and make sure that they review the plan. And the customer would have a copy of that plan too.
Nina.
Yes, I just have one follow-up question that I just don't think I understand is if you're a CTP and then that makes a student eligible for financial aid, so how does that financial aid, if the student gets it, interplay with a flat fee? Because some students might not get financial aid, some might get, different amounts. So how does the flat fee work with taking that into consideration?
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that question, I can ask it.
Okay.
Yeah, I can possibly speak to that. So the VR funding, like we have a program fee, so it'll help contribute towards that, whereas federal financial aid can be used for the classes that they take and the housing and the meal plans. And from what I understand, Pell Grants are like they're just one amount. So they're just like, here's this one amount that you're eligible for, and you can apply it to your bill any way that you need to.
Linda.
Do they get accepted first and then go to a counselor, or do they get the counselor and the amount even as soon as while they're still in high school and then go find a program? Anybody know?
Sorry, I was muted. They would go to the counselor first, just like they would with any service. They wouldn't commit to a program without first seeking VR's approval if they want VR to assist with it, if that makes sense. If it's something they're wanting to do on their own, no matter what, they, of course, could, we can't restrict them from applying or seeking out a program. But if they want VR support, then they would talk to their VR counselor first before making the commitment.
It would be great if we could make a little movie about this process and either put it on the TEA or THECB website.
Yeah, I do have a follow-up question. That's a great question, Linda. What is the language that is being used for these programs that VR recognizes or wants, or like, do you know what I mean? Like, is it higher education? Is it a CTP? Is it an IPSI?
They're comprehensive transition programs, CTPs. That's the language that we're using to refer to the four.
I think that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think that anecdotally, the experiences that we've heard is that students will speak with their VR counselors about their interest in pursuing a CTP program, and will apply to programs. And it's not until they receive an acceptance that it is formally added to their IPE. And a formal commitment is made to then pay, I guess, what moving forward will be a flat fee. But it's not certified oftentimes until a admission has been made.
Right, but they would
Acceptance
still
has
have the
been-
conversation that they're interested in pursuing that route, just like a general student would do. Let's say if they were going to go to UT and apply for their business school, they may research it, see if that's something that they're interested in, see what that degree plan entails, have the conversation with their counselor, and then continue to explore vocationally if that's a good fit before the plan is done.
Yeah, so I'm already like just projecting into the future that students don't know what a CTP is. They know what college is. So I think that the counselors are going to need to be instructed on how to interpret what the student is saying, because I would hate for a student to say, I want to go to college like my big brother or sister, and they don't know that these programs they don't know their IPSI, they don't know their CTP. They just know I want to be a Longhorn or whatever, So anyways, just a caution that students don't end up not getting steered in the right direction because they don't have this kind of specialized language.
I did have another question. I know that something that this council has obviously talked about is just the limited availability of seats within CTP programs that exist currently in our state. And we know that lots of students do end up turning or at least applying to CTP programs outside of the state of Texas. For students who are VR clients who are interested in attending and are accepted into a CTP program outside of Texas, how will TWC approach those requests by VR clients?
These are the only four that we're contracted to serve. So these are the four that will be considered for sponsorship.
Within those, is it first come, first serve until the slots are given out? Or is there a deadline and then they decide which ones they're going to pick?
I don't know how many slots, Linda, that each program has available. I don't know what their bandwidth is.
Thank you.
Yeah, is your question how many slots will VR cover ultimately, or how many slots are available at the institutions?
Both. I mean, is it first come, first serve for those slots?
For
Or
us, for admissions like to Bobcat Rise, and I think a lot of programs are like this. I'm assuming, but I don't know. We have an application process. We get the applications. We have a whole committee. We have a bunch of people go through all the application materials, and we invite a bunch of candidates to college to interview to the campus. And we select the students in order of who we think will benefit the most from what we offer.
excellent, thank you.
So
And I
one
think that
last-
Linda's question was whether there is a hard stop as to this is how many clients VR is going to support to attend a CTP program per fiscal year, a cap on number.
No, there's not a cap.
Thank you.
I had one follow-up question for Laura. Since y'all are only doing a contract with 4 CTP programs, so what if other universities then became a CTP program? Then would that funding be at risk for those students in that university program that later becomes a CTP?
Well, to back up a little bit, only 4 responded. So we didn't limit it to 4.
Oh, okay.
We just got 4 responses. But just like with any other procurement that we enter, we have to have a contract in place. So that should that situation arise, I guess we can entertain it, but I don't know of anything like that we've been approached with yet.
Okay, yeah, I just recall the situation, all those programs that were CTPs, then the funding was immediately stopped for them and it put them in, in a scramble until I guess the contract was initiated. So would be concerned for other programs that decide to become CTPs to not be in that situation.
Well, I mean, just to be clear, we didn't pull the rug from any customers. I mean, if somebody was enrolled in a CTP and the counselor had created the plan and both signed it, then we continued as agreed upon. So, we don't want to disrupt any, any student that is making strides in the program. But I mean, should a situation arise where others become CTPs, I don't foresee that impacting funding for the existing four that did respond because we have existing contracts with them.
Okay, so for the other CTPs that did not reach out to you to create a contract, they're still getting regular VR services for their students?
I can't speak to that, Nina, because I don't know. If you have a specific situation or customer that you're working with, and we can look into that. But as far as a broad spectrum, I can't speak on that.
Okay.
All I know is that these are the four that responded and that we're going through procurement now to finalize the contracts.
Okay, thank you for all these updates. Very helpful.
Yeah. And I think what Nina might be speaking to is that there are CTP specific accredited programs from the Department of Education, to which we have 4 in the state, which is why there were 4 institutions of higher education that responded to that procurement request. However, we have a lot more smaller IPSI programs, just general IPSI programs that don't have a CTP designation, where students currently are receiving VR funds to attend these programs that are not CTPs. And I think that on that, there's a question as to whether those smaller programs, those smaller IPSI programs, should expect a similar type of review or formal contract process that TWC did for these CTP programs.
Right. So when another procurement opens, they can respond to that. And then it'll be reviewed to determine whether or not we enter into a contract with them.
For new CTP programs that come online.
Right down the road, once another procurement opens.
Okay. This has been very helpful. I appreciate the updates. And I guess, Tammy, I'd definitely check in with your current folks that are students to see what the language in their IPs are. I think that there's some also advice that we can give to current high school students. Laura, was the update that you had given shared that the anticipation was that these contracts would be in place by fall? Was the soft deadline?
That's what we're hoping for, but so much of it is outside of our control. Just like Tammy was saying, it goes to the higher echelon, and then they discuss the language and all of those things. So that's our hope, that they'll be in place for the fall semester.
And I guess for current students that are current VR clients that have a CTP on their IPE, the recommendation would be to look at what the language is in their IPE to see if they would have a disruption or reduction in support for the rest of their program length.
Right, they'll want to talk to their counselor.
Okay, that is helpful. Thank you for that update. Now we can scoot to, let's see which agenda item. Agenda item number 8. We put campus and organizational updates towards the end. However, I do know that we are coming close to time, so we might want to limit this item. But this is just an opportunity for members of the committee and organizations to share any updates that they've had, experiences that they've been having within when our last meeting was in March to today. I know that some folks had hinted at attending the Red River Higher Education Authority conference, and so this is the opportunity to share any updates that y'all may have in this sphere.
Yeah, I'll share. Is Christina Gushana still here? I don't see her.
She's not.
Oh, well, it's good to see her there. And Kenny, Kenny actually hosted the event at the Arlington campus. Do you want to say some words?
Yeah, it was a
Have
great
you
event.
recovered?
Yeah. I'm slowly recovering from all of the work, but it was definitely a labor of love. Um, it was a very good turnout. From the responses I've received, that a lot of great information was shared, and people were able to interact and get some tips and pointers, and also kind of confirm some of the things that they've already been working on. I know for my institution now, we don't have a formal IPSI program. We do have some programs that work in the community education side, but we are trying to build out programs that are going to be more geared towards a credential and something that's going to be able to have our students be eligible for employment and a sustainable, independent style of living and a supported independent style of living. So I think it was a success. I may be biased because I was the host, but I'm just repeating back what was told to me, and I would love to do it again.
Yeah, I will add that we're so grateful to Kenny for hosting at the Arlington Tarrant County College South Campus. It's basically right in between Oklahoma and Texas. You know, some people live right there, but the rest of us had to drive a long distance. And I am really grateful the Workforce Commission sent two representatives. Were you there, Laura, by any chance?
No, I believe the director at Region 2, Ann Hoshite, was in attendance.
Yeah, there were
Um,
two, and they were not
and
sitting near me, so I didn't have a chance to say hello.
yes. And then
Yeah,
another woman by the name of Callie. I can't recall her last name.
yeah, so it was great, and we had some local special educators from area districts. Yeah, it's just really good to get everybody in the same room so we can really hammer out what we're talking about because it's confusing because we connect so many entities together to help students with intellectual disabilities progress in life. So.
Wonderful.
And I have a brag. I'm always bragging about my students. Two of my students, we're having our first class of seniors next year. And two of them got selected to be keynote speakers at a national conference in Idaho. They just did it on May 20th and they had, yep, see you're clapping. They had standing ovations. They were, yeah. And everything was paid for, all expenses paid, their hotel, their flights. They traveled for the first time by themselves from different cities. Their parents were like, goodbye, see ya. So that was very exciting.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. We love those success stories and I loved hearing them present. They were great. And so I'm sure you feel very proud. That's awesome. So, do we have any other updates? Yes, Linda.
Hello. We're Texas Parent to Parent, and we're having our statewide conference at Southwestern University on July 17th and 18th. It offers young people to come with their family and stay in a dorm for 2 nights and use the cafeteria and all the activities on campus. And so, think about that. And all families are welcome. And it's going to cost about a quarter of what it cost last year to stay in a hotel. So please advertise it. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I have an exciting personal update. As some folks on this call know, I am the older sibling of my little sister who lives down in the Rio Grande Valley. She has an intellectual disability and has been going through the transition from high school and 18 plus into adulthood. And in just a few weeks, we'll be dropping her off at Texas A&M for their Waco program, which is their work and college opportunities program, which is a 6-week program on campus that our friends at Texas A&M run. It is in collaboration with their Center for Independent Living in Brazos Valley to have job placements or internships specifically for that 6-week program, and also some classroom and independent living experiences as well. And so I'm very personally looking forward to that. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you. If we have no other updates, our second to last agenda item will be an announcement for when our next meeting is. Our next meeting date is set for Friday, July 17th from 10 a.m. to noon. And with that, I think that we can move on to adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Dr. Evans and a second by Linda. The time is 11:55 and we are adjourned. Thank you so much for your time, and keep a lookout for announcements for report subcommittee activities. And I'll see you at our next meeting in July. Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Oh, I realized I had never stopped sharing my screen. I should have stopped sharing after.
It's all good. I was about to like reclaim posts.
Yeah.
I didn't know. It's that weird.
Are we still on the live stream?